All right, so are you ready to dive into a topic that seems to be everywhere lately? The Sigma male. You guys have sent in a ton of
Oh,
stuff, articles, forum threads, even some like relationship advice columns,
yeah, it's really caught fire online.
for sure. And we're going to try to figure out why, focusing on this excerpt someone sent called Why Women Regret Losing Sigma Males. But first, like, always got to say, this isn't about putting labels on people.
Definitely not.
More about looking at the ideas this Sigma concept represents.
Exactly. Patterns of behavior and all that.
So to start, what makes the Sigma male so different? I mean, we hear about alphas, betas, but the Sigma.
Well, the Sigma is often portrayed as this kind of like lone wolf figure, right?
Hmm.
Highly competent. They don't need the validation of a pack, so to speak, but they're still deeply caring, especially when they choose to commit, so they embody this blend of strength and sensitivity.
Which I guess is appealing to a lot of people.
It can be.
The source also mentions they're enigmatic, which honestly sounds kind of cool, but what does that even mean in a relationship?
Yeah, it's like this air of mystery, right?
Yeah.
Not an open book, which can be attractive at first, but, it can also lead to misunderstandings.
Misconnection.
Exactly. And that's where some of the regret comes in down the line.
So let's dig into some of these reasons people regret losing a Sigma, starting with loyalty. This source really emphasizes how Sigmas are all about commitment. Like, no playing games.
Yeah, it's like honesty is their default setting.
And who wouldn't want that?
Right. It speaks to that deep need for security and trust. The source suggests that women who've been hurt before really value a partner who prioritizes fidelity.
It's like that peace of mind knowing your partner is truly dedicated.
Exactly.
But could this intense loyalty almost be a way of avoiding true vulnerability?
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Like maybe by being the good guy, they don't have to fully open up.
Yeah, sometimes holding yourself to this strict moral code can be a defense mechanism against getting hurt.
So it might not even be about the other person as much as about maintaining their own self-image.
Right. And that can create problems down the line.
Especially if the relationship needs both people to be truly open and honest.
It's a good reminder that relationships need more than just good intentions.
Right.
You have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah. To meet your partner in those like messy emotional places.
Exactly.
This Sigma thing really makes you think about relationships differently.
It definitely challenges some traditional ideas.
For sure. And speaking of challenging conventions, the source also talks about how Sigmas relate to the typical hierarchy. The whole alpha beta thing.
It's like they're not even playing that game.
But what does that actually look like in real life?
Well, the traditional alpha is all about outward displays of power, right?
Yeah, like they need that attention.
But the Sigma, they don't need that external validation.
So they're more self-contained.
Exactly. Their sense of worth comes from within their competence achievements, their own code of conduct.
Which can be really attractive.
It can be, especially for someone who's tired of all the games.
Right.
That quiet strength and confidence.
Yeah, it's like they're comfortable in their own skin.
Exactly.
But this source also mentions that this aloofness, this mystery can backfire.
Right. It's that enigmatic thing we were talking about.
So it's exciting at first.
But long term, it can create distance.
Like you're always on the outside looking in.
Yeah, you never quite reach the core of who they are.
So maybe while the Sigma might excel at the knight in shining armor routine, they might struggle with the let's talk about our feelings part.
That's a good way to put it.
And I bet that leads to some of that regret.
Definitely missing that strong presence, but also realizing there was a lack of depth.
Yeah.
Makes the relationship unsustainable.
So it seems like it's about finding a balance.
Absolutely. Strength and vulnerability.
Both are essential.
For a truly fulfilling connection.
Speaking of strength, another aspect that seems to draw women to the Sigma is this whole treating women like queens thing.
Okay.
Now, I gotta admit, I'm a little wary of that phrase. It feels a little old-fashioned, maybe even condescending.
Yeah, I understand that it's important to unpack what it actually means today.
Right, because we're not talking about putting women on a pedestal.
No, not at all.
Or expecting them to be helpless.
It's more about genuine respect consideration, making your partner feel valued and cherished.
So less about grand gestures and more about everyday kindness and attentiveness.
Exactly. Being present, listening actively, being supportive, showing through your actions that your partner's well-being is a top priority.
And the source says this kind of treatment can be so consistent that it becomes almost invisible, and then it's gone, and you realize how much it meant.
You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Exactly, and I think that's what fuels a lot of the regret women express.
Yeah, they remember that unwavering support, how they felt seen and cherished.
And realize that not all partners offer that.
It's not just missing the person, it's missing a certain dynamic.
A way of being treated.
That made them feel truly valued.
That's a really good point. And it leads us to another part of the Sigma that the source talks about, their ambition and drive.
And it's interesting how that ambition ties into their independence.
Right.
They're not just driven, they're self-directed.
Yeah.
You know, they chart their own course. They don't need that external validation we were talking about.
Which makes them stand out, I guess. But doesn't that create potential conflict in a relationship?
It definitely can. Yeah, the source acknowledges that a Sigma's drive can be inspiring, but it can also lead to tunnel vision.
Oh, so like they get so focused on their goals, they forget about their partner.
Yeah, exactly. They might unintentionally neglect their partner's needs.
So it's like they're so busy conquering the mountain, they forget to check in with their climbing partner.
That's a perfect analogy, and it's a common pitfall in relationships, right? We get caught up in our own pursuits. We lose sight of the connection.
And I bet that stings even more when it's the Sigma who's seemingly checked out.
Right, because they're supposed to be all about loyalty.
Yeah, it's like their actions are saying one thing.
But their words are saying another.
And that kind of disconnect can really hurt.
It erodes trust, creates distance.
So even though the Sigma might not be intentionally trying to hurt their partner,
Right.
the impact is still there.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to be mindful of how our actions affect others.
Even when we have good intentions.
Exactly. Relationships need constant communication and adjustment.
Can't just set things on autopilot.
Definitely not. And speaking of communication, there's another layer to this Sigma archetype we haven't talked about yet. That protective instinct.
Oh, yeah.
That urge to defend those they care about.
The knight in shining armor.
But is that realistic today?
That's a good question. I mean, physical protection isn't as relevant in a lot of situations.
True, but the need for security and support is still very real.
So less about literal battles and more about being there for your partner emotionally.
Exactly, being a source of strength when they're facing challenges, standing up for them, creating a safe space.
Like knowing someone always has your back.
Exactly.
But they could also be a burden for the Sigma.
Oh, absolutely.
If they always have to be the strong one.
Right.
It's exhausting.
And they're not allowed to have their own vulnerabilities.
They're not human.
It all comes back to not putting anyone on a pedestal.
No one can live up to that.
And it creates an unhealthy dynamic where one person is always giving.
And the other is always taking.
True partnerships are about reciprocity.
Both people feeling supported and valued.
Exactly.
So maybe the real lesson here isn't about finding a Sigma male, but about finding a partner who embodies those positive qualities.
The loyalty, the ambition, the protectiveness.
But in a balanced, healthy way.
That's a great way to put it.
It's about looking beyond the labels and finding someone who compliments you.
Challenges you, inspires you.
To be your best self.
And vice versa. It's a two-way street.
This conversation has really made me think about how we romanticize certain personality types.
It's easy to get caught up in the idea of the Sigma or the Alpha.
Without considering the complexities of real relationships.
We try to fit people into boxes.
Instead of appreciating their individuality.
And we might miss out on connecting with someone truly compatible.
Even if they don't fit the mold.
It's a good reminder to be open-minded.
Look beyond the surface.
Focus on the qualities that truly matter.
Speaking of qualities that matter, the source also mentions that some women regret losing Sigma males because of their ability to make them feel like queens.
Okay.
Now, we talked about this phrase before, and I'm still a bit hesitant about it.
I understand the language can feel outdated.
Yeah, a little patronizing.
But maybe we can reframe it.
To be more empowering.
I think it comes down to feeling cherished and valued.
So less about being treated like royalty and more about feeling seen, respected, appreciated for who you are.
Exactly. Having a partner who celebrates your strengths, supports your dreams, makes you feel like you can conquer the world.
I like that much better.
It's about finding someone who aligns with your values, respects your independence, encourages you to be your best self.
Not about being put on a pedestal.
But having a partner who walks beside you.
Supporting you every step of the way.
Exactly.
This whole conversation has been so insightful.
It really has.
It's amazing how this deep dive into the Sigma male can reveal so much about what we all seek in relationships.
Regardless of labels or archetypes.
It's a reminder that those concepts are interesting starting points.
But the real magic happens when we move beyond generalizations.
And embrace the complexities of individual connections. And sometimes letting go of those preconceived notions can lead us to the most fulfilling and authentic relationship,
Absolutely. It's about being open to the unexpected.
to the possibility that the perfect partner might not fit the mold we thought we were looking for.
Exactly.
It seems like the big takeaway here is that real connection goes deeper than just checking off boxes on a list.
I think so too. It's not about finding the perfect sigma or alpha. It's about the authenticity of the bond you build.
And remembering it's a two-way street, right?
Absolutely.
It's about finding someone who compliments you, challenges you, helps you grow.
Do you do the same for them?
Mutual respect, understanding, working through the tough stuff together.
That's what it's all about.
So for someone who's been thinking a lot about this Sigma male idea, what would you say are the most important things to remember?
I'd say pay attention to the parts of that concept that really speak to you, but don't forget the potential downsides we talked about.
Right.
Take the good stuff and leave the labels behind.
Because no one can live up to those perfect ideals.
Exactly. Real relationships are messy.
And it's about focusing on what matters most.
Building that connection based on respect, shared values supporting each other.
Whether they're Sigma and Alpha or something else entirely.
Exactly. Sometimes the best relationships are the ones that surprise us
The ones that challenge our expectations.
and open us up to new possibilities.
So keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep believing in the power of connection.
Beautifully said. And that wraps up this deep dive into the world of the Sigma male.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.